So today is the last part of this series, The Paradox of Money. But as I begin this, I just want to pause here for a little bit because I feel like sometimes when we're convicted by something, we feel guilty. And let me tell you, guilt doesn't work. Guilt just makes us feel bad, and it doesn't produce long-term change. So I've been hearing quite a bit of things that people have been buying stuff prior to the series, and now they feel guilty. Listen, God is so gracious and He's so good. He doesn't want us to feel guilty. He wants us to actually see a bigger picture of what He's offering to us. So He doesn't want us to feel bad about ourselves. He doesn't want us to feel sorry for ourselves. He's actually saying, I know you're broken. I know that you're hurt. I know that the ways of this world are very different than mine. But I want to show you something better, something bigger, something beautiful. So as we talk about finances, the point is not for us to feel guilty. The point is for us to see that we're being invited into something bigger and better. Okay? So I don't want you walking away from here feeling bad. I want you walking away from here feeling encouraged that God is inviting you and I for a different way of life. So we have been learning so far that our society, though, has us laser focused on the things that we do not have. Laser focused on what we think we need. Sometimes we go into stores and buy stuff that we don't even need. You know, it's so common in our culture to do that we actually have a term. It's so normal in our culture to just go shopping and buy stuff that we don't need, that we actually have a word for it. It's called retail therapy. Oh, yeah, that's true. And we do that. Some of us should go to real therapy and deal with our issues, but instead, we want to numb the issues by just feeling better about ourselves by whatever stuff we buy. See, we in this series, we find out that we're a lot more addicted, connected, attached to stuff than we would really like to think or that we thought that we were. So there's something going on in our hearts underneath the surface in which stuff has a hold of our hearts. You know, I'll tell you a story. I won't give you no names, but there was this one house that me and my wife would always go to, and we would always go there on Sundays. And a whole bunch of people will go there on Sundays after church. And everybody will hang out. And it was like, man, people will stay there for hours. We will eat. We will, grill out. It was just like, this was the place that every Sunday after church, everybody hung out. But then they remodeled the house. And they got new furniture, nice furniture. You know, their house before didn't look ugly, but it wasn't like fancy. But after remodeling, everything looked spotless and beautiful. And now going into the house, everybody had to take off their shoes. And food could only be at the table. 6 months later, all those people that used to hang out there were no longer there. It no longer felt like a home. See, 6 months earlier, we were consumed with relationships and hanging out. 6 months later, the owners were consumed with their house. I mean, that would never happen to you guys, right? I think that's a reality for all of us. And I think that many of us can relate. See, maybe it's not a house. Maybe it's a car. Maybe it's tech stuff, where it's never ending. Because tech stuff is never ending. Because as soon as you feel good about you're the latest tech, then something else comes out. Or maybe for you it's clothing or shoes or purses or furniture, whatever the case is. So let me ask you a couple questions. Here it is. Why does stuff have such a strong hold in our hearts? Why is that? Why do we get so wrapped up in stuff? What is that? Why do we do that? Well, Jesus addressed this very specific issue in a very clear way in Matthew chapter 6. And Jesus is awesome. He's so beautiful. He doesn't just state the obvious. He doesn't just say, hey, stuff has a hold of your heart. No. He goes beyond that and he says, there's a different way. There's a different way. Let me show you. And he invites us to live differently. So this is what we learned 2 weeks ago, just to recap. We learned that pursuing the good life, right, it is the enemy of having a great life. And the good life is the bling bling, the newer car, the bigger car, la troca más grande, right? And always staring at stuff, right? The new thing. So let's see what Jesus has to say about this. We'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at several verses, but we'll start in verse 19. It says this. It says, don't store up what? Treasures. So Jesus is talking about treasures here. Don't store up treasures on earth, where they can be eaten by moths and get rusty, and where thieves break in and steal. Now, let me explain a little bit about what Jesus is saying here. He is not saying, this is not what he's saying. He's not saying don't save for college. That's not what he's saying. He's saying don't have a savings account. That's not what he's saying. Don't save for retirement. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is something different. He's explaining and defining what treasures on earth are. He's saying that treasures on earth are things that can be destroyed by rust and by moth, and where thieves come in and break and can steal and take it away from us. He's talking about those temporary things, right? Things that will not outlast our life. Things that are here one moment and gone the next. Things that are here one moment and in storage or in the garbage the next. Those things that don't really matter in life. Those are the treasures on earth that Jesus is talking about. He's saying there's something wrong with our culture. There's something wrong with our hearts, right? When we want to make the treasures of this world our treasures as well. So he's saying, I want you to be careful. I want you to put your hope and your rest and your comfort not on these things. You know, we're a swapping generation. I was thinking about this. Constantly replacing the old with the new. You know, my grandpa used to fix everything. Everything. He had like a little, like my racket broke, he will fix it. I don't know what kind of glue he had back then. If the radio broke, he'll fix it. If the TV broke, he'll fix it. I mean, this guy fixed everything. Nowadays, we don't fix anything. We just replace everything. Right? Whenever something new comes out, the old one's gone. Constantly upgrading, even when the old is not even that old. Man, a new phone comes out. It's crazy every time a new iPhone comes out. It is crazy to see how people go crazy, right? Like, I upgraded my phone. I think it was an XR or something. It was 10 something. And the new contract will give me a new free phone. And my kids were so excited. I'm going to get this one. Oh, my goodness, guys. It was the same exact phone. It was the same thing. Oh, no, but Dad, the cameras, oh, my. It's the same phone. But we get so caught. Oh, no. Some of you guys are going, come here, Pastor. It's not the same phone, man. Listen, really? Really? A camera? Come on. $1,000? Come on. Come on. Really? But I think we're all guilty of that. You know, back in the Air Force, Mina and I had a RAV4 that was 2 years old. But it was like the older kind of RAV4, like the first generation. This was back in the day. I'm very old, right? But this was, so it was 2 years old, but it was 2 years old and it still smelled new. Do you know why? Because we didn't have kids. So our car still smelled new. It was 2 years old. It looked brand new. It looked awesome, and we loved it, right? We're like, oh, man, this little RAV4 is good. 4-cylinder is good on gas. But then the new RAV4 came out, and that sucker was nice. So now we were no longer happy with our 2-year-old, still smelling new car. Has that ever happened to you? Mina's not here. She was here. So let me tell you, we ended up buying that car. For Mina, of course. I always had the hoopty. She had the good car. She didn't let me drive that thing for a month. And you don't understand, Mina never drives. I drive. It feels weird. When I see a guy and he's on the passenger seat, it just seems so weird to me. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But to me, in my mind, like my dad always drove. So then Mina's like, oh, no, you're not driving my car. That lasted like a month. See, we get caught up on stuff and we find worth and meaning and all kinds of sick things begin to take a hold of our heart. Now, is there anything wrong with having a brand new RAV4? Of course not. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, why do we buy what we buy? Why? Is it to feel something here? Because if it is, then what we're doing is we're creating treasures here on earth. Because you know what happened like 6 months after we got that car? Somebody, I won't say who, but you probably know who, backed up into something. See, things on earth don't last. They break, they rust. Don't tell me about our sermon today. Now she knows all about it. She lived it. See, this is what Jesus is talking about. But you know what's even worse? Instead of just pointing the finger, but we do this all the time. You know what happened when I went into the Air Force? Me and Mina had nothing. And we're like, oh my goodness, if we just have one another and we can be together, that's all that matters. You remember being there? We were there. And so we got this 2-bedroom condo inside the base. And so we're young, we're broke, we don't have anything. And we have this amazing, brand new 2-bedroom condo inside the base, so we don't got to pay for anything. But the problem is we don't have anything. Like, we don't have anything. We were sleeping in sleeping bags for a few weeks. Like, we had nothing. It was huge. It was empty. Closets, just empty. We lived there for 4 years. When we left, you couldn't fit anything anywhere. We had 2 bedrooms. We had no kids. And the place was completely full. Every closet was full. The second bedroom, you couldn't fit one more thing in there. And here's the interesting part. 4 years later, we have all this stuff. And now we decide that I'm going to go to seminary. And I move into seminary, and they give us this little tiny, tiny little thing. Guess how much stuff fit in there? Nothing. Guess what happened to all the treasures that we built over the last 4 years? Not even the furniture fit in the door. This place was so small, we had to get rid of our living room set that we had bought because it wouldn't even fit through the door. All gone. Except my books. That we kept. Books can be treasured, by the way. No, they can be idols. The point is, listen, material stuff comes and goes, and we need those things, right? God is very clear. He's like, you're in this world, but you're not of this world. So therefore, yes, the things that we have, and then so the problem is, what does it mean to our hearts? Why are we so consumed by it? Why do we get worth? Why do we get meaning from the things that we have, right? So here's what Shane Claiborne said, and I fully agree. Take a look at it. It says, a study comparing the health of a society with economics. And one of the things it revealed is that wealthy countries like ours, the U.S., have the highest rates of what? Depression, suicide, and loneliness. See, we are the richest and most miserable people in the world. That's us. We are the richest and most medicated country in the world. Right? So Jesus is saying in verse 19, let me just repeat it again, it's not up there. Verse 19 says, don't store up treasures here on earth, where they can be eaten by moth and get rusty, and where thieves break in and steal. But then verses 20 and 21 say this. It says, instead, store up your treasures where? In heaven, where they will never become moth-eaten or rusty, or where they will be saved from thieves. And this is the kicker right here. This one line is so rich. It says, where your treasure is, check it out, where your treasure is, there your heart and thoughts will also be. Think about that. He's saying whatever your treasure, that's where your heart is. And that's where your thoughts are at. So what does this mean then? But he's saying have treasure in heaven. What does that mean? What does it mean to have treasure in heaven? Like, I buy stuff for heaven? Like, what does that mean? Well, first, we need to follow the treasure trail. Let's take a look at the treasure, and we'll see where we go. Here's the first thing, though. If you want to know where your heart is, just follow the treasure trail. And how do you follow the treasure trail? Well, follow the money trail. Look at your bank statements. Look at your credit card statements. Look at your receipts. Follow the money trail because it will tell you where your treasure is. See, when you put your money into things, you will feel responsible for them. If you buy a timeshare, do you feel like you need to go and take a vacation there, whether you can afford it or not? Of course, because you already invested in there. It has part of your heart. Wherever you put your money, your heart will follow, right? If you happen to have season tickets to any team, you feel like you have to be there because you've invested. You put your money there, your treasure is there, right? Again, there's nothing wrong with these things, but wherever we put our money, our heart will follow, right? You put your money towards Compassion International with kids that are poor and that are hungry, and you get letters, your treasure will be there as well. Wherever you put your money, your heart will follow. It's not the other way around. It's not the money will follow your heart. It's that where you put your heart, where you put your money, your heart will follow. And that's critical and that's important. Your heart always follows your treasure, not the other way around. So let me just explain to you this way. Right? If I have the opportunity to invest money, and I invest a whole bunch of money over here, and I invest a little bit of money over here, which one do you think is going to have my attention, is going to have my pull, is going to have my thoughts, and is going to have my heart? This one or this one? This one. Because where we put our money, our hearts will follow. It's that way, right? If I put my treasure over here, and I spend my time, and I spend my money, and I spend my emotions, and I have an attachment, my heart is naturally going to follow whatever I did those things to. So if you want to find out where your heart is, take a look at your bank statement. Take a look at your credit cards. Take a look at your receipts, because they will tell you what your treasure is. Bottom line. Now that's hard. But the good news is this. The good news is that God is a God of hope, and that God invites us to something different. And the good news is, if it is true that our heart follows our treasures, then it means that if we redirect our treasures, it will redirect our what? Our hearts. So maybe we find ourselves in like, oh my gosh, I've been putting my hopes and my comfort and my treasure in all these worldly things. And there's nothing wrong with having these things, but my hope and my comfort and my worth has been in these things. Well, all I need to do is now begin to put my treasure somewhere else, and my heart will follow. You know, I remember there's one guy who his treasure was stuff. Right? He had a Harley, he had a whole bunch of toys, and he constantly had to work overtime to be able to keep up with the toys, to be able to keep up with the bills, to be able to keep up with what he had. But then he changed his treasure. He sold his Harley. He adjusted his life so that he could have time for God and his family, because he wanted that to be his treasure. Right? And it even came to a point where he switched jobs so that he will be able to have more time to be able to serve God and serve his family. See, your treasure will determine where your heart is at. So if you want your heart to be at a certain place, all you have to do is redirect your treasure. Now, here's the thing. See, if you say, man, I want to have a heart for the poor, I really care about the poor. Well, let me ask you this. How much money are you spending on the poor? How much time are you spending on the poor? Because if you're not spending either one of those things, then you're just lying to yourself that you care about the poor. And because you hit a like on social media, it doesn't mean that you care. It doesn't. See, our generation somehow thinks that if we repost something, that we're actually doing something. We're not. This is so crazy in our generation. We think that we're keeping people accountable because of our social media. What? Who? What? How? You tell me you care about something, you have to take inventory and say, how much time and how much money am I giving to that? Do I really care about the poor? Or do I just say I care about the poor? Our money and our time indicates what we really treasure. Just how many likes and how many reposts you have about a certain topic doesn't mean anything. Now, here's the thing. This is hard. This is hard work. But that's why a third of everything Jesus talked about was money and possessions. Why did he talk so much about this? Because finances and possessions are the number one thing that competes for our hearts. It's either God or the treasures of this world. Now, here's an Alexa. And man, my life is so much easier because of Alexa. I don't know about you, like there's people like conspiracy theory, like they're hearing all the time. Well, yeah, they are actually. They're recording everything. They probably are. They know everything about you. Oh, well, then that means I got to live a clean life because I can't be living a double life. It'll get thrown in my face at some point. But here's the point with Alexa. I go in the basement. I say, Alexa, lights on. I wake up. Alexa, what's the temperature? I'm going to go to sleep. Alexa, set an alarm. I don't got to do anything. It's so easy. I love Alexa. We love easy things, right? You can do so much. In fact, I'm in the kitchen and we have like the show one, right? Or if I'm watching TV because I got the Fire Stick, all I have to do is show me the front door. Boom, the ring comes up on the TV. So easy, right? Life is so easy. Redirecting our hearts is not easy. See, and I kid around sometimes. I'm like, Alexa, lights off. And then when Nathan gets annoying, I'm like, Alexa, turn Nathan off. I seen a meme, right? We're like, it was Christmas time and we needed to put the Christmas tree up and we're like, oh. And I had just gotten surgery, so I couldn't get up there. I was like, oh, I don't want. And then I saw this meme that said, Alexa, decorate the Christmas tree. I was like, oh, that would be so awesome if Alexa could do that. We want things to be easy. Now, what if I could go to Alexa and be like, Alexa, stop me from wanting stuff? Wouldn't that be easy? Some of you guys are like, oh my gosh, if that was out. Some of you guys are super excited if that was the case because you would send your spouse. Like, go, honey, go. You need to go. Go speak to Alexa. Many of you know that heart change is not easy. Finances, possessions, the things of this world have a hold of our heart. And Jesus is not condemning us. He's not like, oh, how dare you. He's saying, listen, I'm offering you something better. I'm offering you something eternal. And then he finishes the verse by saying this. He says, no one can serve two masters. And what two masters is he talking about? He's saying you can't serve two masters. You can't serve money and God. You can't. See, here's the thing. Money's supposed to serve us. We're not supposed to serve it. But when we get caught up on stuff, when we get caught up on the treasures of this world, we're actually a slave to the things that we have. We're a slave. Instead of us using money, instead of us owning things, things own us. Now, here's the thing though. At this point, you need to understand that what is in your wallet is not a financial issue. It is a heart issue. Once again, if we want to change our hearts, right, if we want to find freedom and peace and hope, right, then we need to change our treasure. And as we saw 2 weeks ago, the way to freedom, to peace, and to joy is generosity. Is to be generous, is to hold things with open hands, right? To get to a place that we don't just look about what can I get, but we say, what can I give? See, that changes everything. That changes everything. And it's not just about finances. It becomes a way of life. It becomes a way of how we hold everything, right? And so here we get to this place where I begin to ask these questions that I've asked many times, and it's good for us to wrestle with this. You know, have you ever met a happy, greedy person? You haven't. There's no way that you've met someone who's always happy and who's always greedy. You can't. It's impossible. Now, have you ever met an unhappy, generous person? Someone who you know that is generous and they're unhappy. No. Because people that are constantly generous, you know what? They're encouraging and they're happy and they're optimistic. Why is that? Because their treasure is in the right place. And the heart is in the right place. Now, here's my question then. Where do you want your heart to be? That's what we need to ask, and that's what we need to wrestle with. Where do you want your heart to be? Maybe you're saying you like a heart for the poor, right? Maybe you're saying you like a heart for God. Maybe you like a heart for people that are far from God. Maybe you want a heart for ladies that are being humanly trafficked, right? For victims that live that kind of life. Maybe you're saying, I would like to have a heart for something that is meaningful and worthwhile, right? I'm tired of my heart being about me, myself, and I. I want to be generous. Well, here's what I want to suggest to you. Here is the practical part of this, because we could talk about this all day long, but until we put it into practice, it makes no difference. Just like when you hit all those likes, if those likes are not backed up by a lifestyle that reflects your likes and your reposts, it really means nothing. So here's the thing. Here's what I have seen that is biblical and transforming. It is to take prioritized percentage progressive giving. What does that mean? It means priority, right? That before I take anything out of my paycheck, before I deposit anything into my kingdom, before I do anything for me, I want to take the first portion and give it away. That will transform our lives. Give it away to God, give it away to the poor, give it away to that ministry that really cares about the things that you care about. Right? And by doing that first, I'm saying to myself and I'm saying to God, listen, there is something more important in this life than me, and I'm going to invest in it. And that, my friends, is called treasure in heaven. I prioritize first. I make it a priority, right? Because what happens if I say, oh man, I want to give to something, but I don't really have the money, and if you pay everything else. No, if you make it first, before you do anything, I guarantee you, now you're allowing God to come in and to do something supernatural with your finances. The second thing is percentage. And the reason why I say percentage, first of all, because it's trackable. And second of all, because the Bible talks about percentages, right? There's plenty of places in the Bible that talks about the tithe. That means 10%. But if at this point in your life, you're giving 0% of your income, I will say, adjust your life and give 1 or 2%. Adjust your life so that you can give 1 or 2%. But you need to pick a percent that will change your lifestyle. See, because if we don't really struggle in giving, it's not really a priority, right? It's not gonna allow God to come in and change our hearts. So you need to it needs to be a priority. You need to take a percentage, but then you need to do it progressively. In other words, see, some of you guys have been around, and some of you guys know what I'm talking about with regards to the tithe. Some of you guys don't even know what that is. It's okay. If you don't know what that is, don't even worry about it. But some of you guys have been around for such a long time, and you have been tithing for such a long time, and you've adjusted your life to that. You give a certain percent away, right? And that becomes... But your life is no longer growing. And it's crazy because we want to grow in our relationships. We want to grow in prayer. We want to grow in knowledge. But somehow, some way, we think that we've arrived once we hit a certain number. And we're like, in that area, I don't need to grow anymore. No, we're always growing. We're always growing. And in this area, we need to grow as well. So we need to figure out a way in which we're constantly being pushed to a different lifestyle in order to be able to, we can bless others. So, here's the thing. Many of us are so consumed with ourselves. Many of us are consumed and we feel like we're victims with everything that happened in our lives. We're always pointing the finger to somebody else. We're so consumed with the hurt that has been done to us. And listen, some of us have been deeply hurt and it wasn't our fault. Deeply hurt. So I'm not minimizing the pain and the hurt that others have done to us. But some of us have adjusted our lives where everything is about us. Everything. The way we filter people, the way we view people, the way that we interact with people is about what we're going to get out of it. And some of us interact the same way with God. I'm here for what I'm going to get out of what God is going to give me. There's a reason why Jesus talks so much about possessions and money. Because we now take in turn all these things that we feel bad about ourselves, that we're consumed with ourselves, and we turn it inward and we make it about us. And what is going to bring me worth, and what is going to give me meaning, and what is going to make me feel better. And we are the richest, second richest country in the world. And yet we are the most depressed, most medicated country in the world. We need to wake up and see the reality of what Scripture's saying. He's saying if your treasure is in all this stuff, if your heart is consumed by all this stuff, you're never going to be free. And God wants us to experience freedom and joy and peace. And the only way to get there is for us to begin to take steps in living a generous life. Listen, because it's not about finances. That's just the tip. It comes to a place where you live out generosity, where you live a place where you understand nothing belongs to you and you hang on to everything with open hands, and whatever God blesses you with, you can enjoy because it doesn't own you. But yet, when things are gone, it doesn't matter, right? The Apostle Paul said, I have learned the secret of life. I have learned to be content with a lot or with nothing. That is when we're living. And so therefore it translates into so many other ways. It translates into somebody else needs a car and I have an extra car, I can give it away. If there's a need somewhere in the community and I can adjust my lifestyle to bless someone else, we can. And now what we have in savings is not just about the security that I feel and a sense of safety net. It is a sense of, God, this belongs to you. And thank God that is there, and it's wise to have that there. But maybe God may use that for somebody else as well. Right? It becomes a way of life. You know, so many people were shocked with me giving away a kidney. You know what that is? That's living out generosity. That kidney didn't belong to me. It's a way of life that nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to God. And that brings freedom. That brings joy. And that brings peace. But we're so used to living with everything tight-handed, everything consuming us. And you know what? We're consumed with ourselves and we're miserable. We're miserable. Because we are consumed with our way and our ways and what we want and how we want it. And God is saying, let go. Live a life of freedom in me. I got you. I got you. Let's pray.